to Think Different podcast, where we bridge the gap between healthcare and mental health. In this episode, we're honored to have a registered nurse sharing valuable insights on anxiety and depression. Together, let's unravel the layers of these challenges, gain practical tips, and foster a greater understanding of mental well being. Let's begin this insightful conversation.
So thank you for finally being here and willing to share your insights on anxiety and depression. Welcome to the
Yeah,
platform.
thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to share, a few nuggets on how we can fight this anxiety and depression among people that we know or people that we might come across in our daily jobs.
True. So let's get right into the questions. From your experience, how has, anxiety and depression impact persons? What are normally the common factors you tend to look out for?
Okay, so you have persons who I want to talk about them separately. I can see
Okay,
if I
sure.
how brief I can be. But
Yeah.
let's say for anxiety, persons might neglect their hygiene. They might neglect their surroundings, keeping it clean. Sometimes they have a hard time processing information. So I'm speaking to you in real time, but you didn't hear what I said. You didn't understand what I said, even though it is in its plain, simple terms. Sometimes persons can have symptoms inside their body. Some of us get tummy symptoms. Is either you're going to the bathroom a lot, you're having anxiety, and it causes you to have diarrhea. This kind of happens when you're gonna have an exam, and these are normal forms of anxiety. But anxiety in itself is when there's no cause for the person to be reacting like this. So every
Hmm.
day you come and you have sweaty palm, you're just overly nervous, you have this impending doom on life. Let's say, and they tend to be very negative persons. So it doesn't matter what is going on. Let's say, for instance, you're about to go to the grocery store. It was snowing today, and you still have to run out because you need to get this thing. A person with anxiety might have anxiety towards traveling or just the storm itself. This person is going to have the most negative thoughts coming up, and they cannot control it. You understand? So
Right.
it will now prevent you from carrying on your daily activities. So you anxiety persons, they tend to be very late. They tend to create a whirlwind. You go and let me tell you, I want to talk about anxiety even in us as professionals also, because not because a person is not diagnosed or has not been confined to a mental institution doesn't mean that they don't suffer a mental illness. You understand? So you might have a coworker that they come to the office, they don't even get themselves settled, before going around and just either the excessive chatter or just being loud, unnecessary outbursts. These are
Right.
signs of anxiety. You understand? And I don't know if I mentioned before, just not being able to process information, not being able to remember stuff. These are also forms of anxiety. They might have, when it gets severe, they can have signs of not swallowing effectively. Your food is not being digested properly. These are signs of anxiety, right?
Right.
Depression has some similar factors. However, depression now is like a mood. So you're not really looking at any one particular incident that causes you fear, that causes you doubt, that causes you despair. It's just your entire deportment. So you're just sad. The person is sad for no reason or for reason. You have persons who suffer grief. Somebody for you died, or you broke up, you had a breakup, your relationship, you could have lost a job. You're suffering loss, you're going through grief, and you have a phase called depression. Not everybody
Right.
gets out of that. You also have the unexplained, which is postpartum. People have their babies, and for whatever reason, this depressive situation has taken over their brains, have taken over their minds, and they just not able to function in the normal way. So these persons also neglect their hygiene. They just don't have the energy to do anything. They don't have
Right.
energy to carry on conversations. So you're talking to them, and it's as if you don't even exist. It's not that they mean to offend you. It's just that this is the state that their mind is in. They don't have any hope. They are doing something, they have an undertaking, and they don't have no plans to carry it through because they cannot see the joy in this. Furthermore, a depressive person can't even laugh. So forget about that. Very negative. So they might come around and you have on your nice hot pink clothes, and they're like, why are you wearing that? These are signs of depression. I'm telling you, it might sneak up on you subtle, but if you check the entire personality, you go into their homes, the place is ransacked for no reason. For no reason. They don't want to spread the bed, they don't want to sweep out the house, they go into the bathroom, it's a mess. This is common signs of depression. They don't bathe, the teeth not brushed, the hair is unkempt, meaning it don't comb. They have a wig and the wig need a revival. These are signs of depression. Their family member, their children also will suffer because it's like they cannot relate to them anymore. You
Right.
know, they don't have a need for sex. For persons who are at that stage of life where they are probably married, they have a husband, or even your boyfriend or whatever, but you're not able to enjoy a sexual experience as you would have, you know. And again, they're not able to function. So whether the person is going to school, they cannot function. The brain is just not up to, a capacity where it can take in anything or give out anything. These persons tend to sleep a lot. So when you look, they're just sleeping, sleeping, sleeping. This hypersomnia, we call it. They're just going on. If you give them a week and don't wake them, they are gonna be asleep.
Wow.
So yes. And again, there are also other signs that I don't have to get into too much because of the medical terminology. So when you do their labs, everything is going to be out of whack. They can suffer dehydration because they don't eat. They're not drinking. There is no, it's as if it's sucking the living life out of you. That is how depression and anxiety. This is how these this disease or disorder, this is how they function at the end of it all. So you have a good friend and she's normally chirpy, but all of a sudden you realize, and a person can be diagnosed if after 2 weeks, all of these symptoms they just continue. You try to cheer up the person, they cannot get themselves together. You
Right.
try to, intervene, you try to talk to them. Sometimes they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk, they don't want to relate anymore. You're calling them, they don't want to answer the phone. These are your definitive signs. So that's how it shows up.
And I think one of the common symptoms that I mentioned earlier on that you find among younger people is the sleeping, the
Yes.
constant sleeping,
Sleeping.
sleeping for a
Yes.
very long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they themselves don't really understand that when they're going through that, it's not like, because sometimes, like I've heard persons say, them sleep, but them still get
Yes.
up and feeling, exhausted.
Still exhausted. You can't get no energy. You don't have no energy whatsoever. And I want to tell you though that even since being in a first world country and countries that suffer from a cold climate where
Right.
there's no sunlight, because do you know that vitamin D deficiency can cause depression also? No, places like Jamaica where we have the sun is our best friend. I mean, we have it every day unless we are going through a rainy season. But for the most part, our weather is a sunny, warm weather. And guess
Right.
what? That contributes to the fact that nationally as a people they claim that we are one of the happiest countries, so that can attest Now, when you walk into places like England, when you come to places like America, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, these places, if you check the statistics, depression and anxiety is very high. And this is why you have even your children are being diagnosed, because the children have to be locked up into houses. They have to be, you're going to school, the snow at this time of the year, the snow is mostly there. You're traveling a school bus or your mother's vehicle. You're going to the school building. You're locked up in there for the 8 hours, for the 6 to 8 hours that you're there. You're inside. There's no sun.
Right,
So
yeah.
they can become also deficient in vitamin D. So and this is very common amongst children and adults. So doctors will recommend you take a vitamin D supplement, to keep yourself going, or you ensure that your diet have green leafy vegetables, your fruits, just to ensure that you are trying to supplement this potential risk of a vitamin D depletion, right?
Right.
So yes, there are a lot of reasons as to why a person can come to this.
Okay. Are
Mhm.
there any effective interventions that could support persons who suffer from anxiety and depression?
Right. So the other day I was reading a book, Learning Cognitive Behavior Therapy, and this is actually a scholarly piece. It's a literature created for clinicians in how to deal with especially anxiety, because I'm going to deal with them different. So, with
Right.
anxiety, you want to get a hold of this person's mind, because the truth is, there is an alteration in the mind. There is a fear that something really bad is going to happen. So, the effective way is to try. It's not all the time that it is achieved, but it can be achieved. So we have to employ positive thinking. We have to ensure that this person understands. And I've said before, you see, insight into your mental illness can give you the transformation that you need. Insight meaning that this person knows that something is wrong. You know that this way of thinking that you have is not the normal way. Out of 10 persons, you in that 10, you are the only one, or you're one of two who believes that if the rain falls, your house is going to flood. You know what I
Right.
mean? Even though there's no result, you still have this way of thinking. So this person now has to accept that something is wrong and I need help. That is the first step to any help, to any form of effectiveness, because they have to be the change. So you want to gather the thoughts. You want to gather their thoughts in every given scenario. So in my job, what is causing me to really, portraying this fear? Why am I why am I doing things the way I'm doing it? Why I speak the way I speak. There's a limiting belief on the inside of every anxiety person or person suffering anxiety that causes them to fear something. So you have to go deep, and this is why now the clinician is very important. So you want to develop a relationship with a psychologist. It is good for you to see a psychologist, it's good for you to see a psychiatrist. These things have been known to be effective. So you want to ensure that you seek a physician. So you can speak to your doctor, you can speak with your nurse if you go to the hospital, or if anywhere that you get care. You can even, if a student, you can even speak to your teacher. You can say, I think I need some help with what is going on in my mind. I need to speak to someone, and somebody will be able to refer you, right?
Right.
So that is one way, seeking help, knowing that something is wrong and you need help, because if you don't get a hang on this thing, you're going to lose out on a quality life. You're going to lose out on being able to maximize in life as an individual. You limit yourself if you just carry on with anxiety and depression, right? So after you see your psychologist, after you've seen your psychiatrist, if you are diagnosed, then you will get tools on how to cope with this disorder. You will either be started on medication therapy, and the main line of treatment is your anxiolytic, right? So these medications, they work in trying to reduce the stress on what we call the central nervous system. Because in a person suffering from anxiety, what happens is that the fight or flight system is constantly at work. Your limiting belief, your body is telling you to fear this thing. It's telling you to get away from this thing. It's telling you you might be rejected. It's telling you you need to overdo something in order to be seen, in order to be accepted. These are stuff. So in order for you to really get a hold on it, sometimes you'll be prescribed anti-anxiolytics. So these are things that will help you to calm down, in essence, right?
Right.
Persons who have depression, they will be given antidepressants. And these, as I said before, they are basically medication, chemicals that will help to balance these hormones inside of your brain. Because in a depression person, what happened is that these hormones that cause depression, they have now been heightened. Your feel good hormones such as your dopamine is now lessened. So that is a way, pharmacologically they can give you medications to balance out these hormones. And guess what, you will be monitored by persons who know about these disorders. These persons are trained, they have experience in managing these things. And how, I want to say, in today, knowledge has really increased. The general public has an idea of what should go on in a treatment. So even if you are the patient and you're seeking help, you can know if this is working for you or if it is not. So let's say
Right.
you start on the medications, you are going to your group therapy or you're seeing a therapist, because you have to unpack all of this verbatim that has been going on in the mind. Because as I said, one saying I like to keep in mind is that thoughts become things. And as a
Mm-hmm.
man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So if you say you're sad, everything about your life is going to become sad. If you think that you should fear this thing for no reason, then before you know it, this thing has now become a giant and you just cannot face it, whatever the fear is. So by talking to somebody, and they will know how to ask you the right questions. Therapy
Right.
is very good if you find the right therapist. It is very good. You can unpack some of the things. They can even help you to go back in areas where you might have suppressed. You put it away and you forget it, but it's still there affecting you. So it's good to seek help. And clinical psychologists, I believe that once they have been certified to deal with anxiety, to deal with depression, your psychiatrist, then guess what? You are on the right track. Right? So medication
Quite
is
so.
one. I want to talk about some of us, the environment that we live in. Sometimes we not everybody can control the environment, your place where you live, but if you can, you have to look around your surroundings. Because as I would have said, not everybody, but a lot of people would migrate from place to place for different reasons, right? So, what is
Right.
it about your surrounding that can potentially cause you to be in a state where you're always anxious? You know, I was raised in the countryside in Jamaica, and I worked in West Kingston. My first job, my first career was as a nurse in West Kingston. No, I am not aware of this culture. I don't know that it can be deadly. You don't know. But as soon as now I started to get knowledge on my surroundings, know what is going on and what are some of the potential. Because as a nurse now, the patients that are coming to you, they have to tell you what happened and where it happened. And you're
Right.
realizing that you walk in this area every day. So these are potential things that can raise a person's fear. It can raise your anxiety. You know what I mean? So one of
Yeah.
my plans was that I have to get out of this situation. I do not feel safe and I need to get out from here. So I made the plans and I'm no longer in an area where I am fearful that I will be shut down, that I will be probably, kidnapped or whatever the reason is. So as a person, I would say look in your surroundings because you want to be happy. You want to do things that will contribute to your mental well being. So, are you traveling on a route that is potentially harmful to your survival? Are you in a relationship that you are not safe? Are you going to a school that you're not safe? Do you work at a job that you're potentially threatened? You know what I mean? These are things that
Yeah.
we have to think about. What are the things that we can do to change this? Do I have a lifestyle that can cause me to eventually get sick? Am I consuming things that are not good for me, and so it causes me to be worrisome that I might be developing some kind of illness? You know what I mean? So there are things that we can alter about our life. So your lifestyle, your surroundings, who you are surrounded by. Are you having friends and associates that when you call them or when they call you, you're immediately discussing every negative thing on the planet? For instance, me personally, I don't even want to hear any news. I'm telling you the truth. If I don't be led to go and look at news, I don't sit down and follow that, because those things will cause you anxiety. It will cause you to be depressed because these are things you have no control over. If I get up today and I turn on the news and it tells me 50 people were gunned down on this road here that I live, then guess what? It's not going to be a good feeling. So you
That's
have to
true.
know, you have to see what you're consuming. What are you getting up and reading the newspaper versus getting up and reading a book about positive thinking? You know what I mean? Are you getting
Hmm.
up and doing something that can elevate your life, or are you wallowing in the stresses of the things that you have would have come through? So these are things that you have to look on. Your surroundings, your associates, because the associates are going to be pouring into you and you are going to be pouring into them. You need somebody that when they take up the phone and say, do you see what's happening in Jamaica? You say, well, guess what? All of that is happening in Jamaica, but there's nothing we can do about it. And we wish them all the best. You understand? And you stop
Right.
the negativity right there. Don't go into it because number one, you cannot control that. And normally, anxiety people obsess over things they cannot control because the mind wants something to be negative. It wants something to feed on that will feed this anxiety. You know what I mean? For me
Yeah.
personally, I worry about where my children will go to school when they're teenagers. And I have to just stop myself. I said, but we have now. We don't have a next couple of years. We don't see that. That's nothing I can control. So these are ways now I just say, guess what? I have them at this stage. Let me see how best what I can do to ensure that they're safe at this stage until we reach there. We worry about that.
Right.
So I would have covered that. You seek help, you want to ensure you watch your surroundings, look where you're living. You want to look at your associates and you want to see what things you are doing that can contribute to you being free of this anxiety, to you being, now elevated and in a well mental state.
That's
If
true.
I
And
answer the
and you
question.
mentioned about watching the news and how much intake of, the updates with that can
Yes,
cause this high level of anxiety. The Prime Minister of
yes,
Jamaica had actually mentioned of that people are, following up social media and,
yes.
they're getting depressed and
Mm-hmm.
this height of anxiety start develop among them. So you're finding
Mm-hmm.
that people are just getting so paranoid. I think that is one of the biggest things right now. People are extremely paranoid.
Yes. Yes. I forgot to mention one thing. It's very important,
Yeah.
and that is your spiritual life also. You know, not everyone practices spirituality, or they want to say religion, but if persons have a faith that they practice, and I want to talk about Christianity. I'm a Christian. That's what I know about. But the Bible says fear come by the hearing of his word, you know, and in his
Hmm.
word, he does not encourage anxiety. So if you are a follower of Jesus Christ, and I talk to my patients about this also, when they come to the emergency room and you can see the mode, because I tell you, you can spot a patient suffering these things. By the time they sit down and you start talking to them, you can just know what you're coming up against. And you can use the word and encourage them. So I will say to Christians and persons who you practice believing in the Lord Jesus Christ, you have to read your Bible. You know, you have to spend time with God. That way you will not succumb to these depressive atmospheres and to these anxiety, because life will always feed us stuff that will cause you to go off. But if you practice your faith, if you center yourself with the word, then this is also a way that you can fight this. You can be victorious at this anxiety. Yes.
That's really a good one because persons who are non-believers tend to just pull for, the person just mental and that's it.
Yes.
But a lot
Mm.
of these things is not only just on the medical side, but also a spiritual side. And if you
Yes.
don't completely understand that world, then it makes
Mm-hmm.
no sense to actually make mention of it to anybody that is
Thank
not
you.
equipped that way.
Not equipped. Yes, but it's important.
Are there any particular challenges or barriers that patients tend to face when they're seeking help if they're suffering from anxiety or depression? And how do you assist them as a nurse in doing this, in
Okay.
overcoming the obstacle?
Okay. So the one of the main barriers that a person can face in seeking help for mental disorders is being stereotyped, or the fear of being stereotyped, because they're already stereotyped. However, let's say you're in your young adult stage, you don't want to be seen as a mental patient. So you are less likely to go seek out a psychiatrist. You are going to be more likely to struggle on your own with this. So, one of the barriers that we can try to fight is the stereotyping with mentally ill patients, because mental illness is just like any other illness. They can come upon any one of us. They don't respect any person or culture. You know, if persons are not aware, they can suffer or succumb to these symptoms, right? So that's one, this being stereotyped. Two, mental illness, or I want to say it's not very accessible to get help. So we don't have a lot of specialist institutions, especially in developing countries like our own in Jamaica. We don't have a lot of places. Yes, we know about the Bellevue, and the government is making an initiative to close it out, right? It is very helpful. While I was as a student there, I did my free elective, and this is like 10 years ago. However, it did open my eyes to mental illness and the treatment. I did meet persons these persons were executives in their jobs, and they were admitted at the Bellevue Hospital. They would have had access to the treatment that they require, whether it be therapy, whether it be group therapy, therapy with the clinical psychologist, medication therapy, having a time that you can get to get your mind together. It's not a healing, but it's necessary. It is absolutely necessary. I remember I met this accountant. She was a bipolar person,
Oh
right? She was
wow.
diagnosed with bipolar, yes. And it really opened my eye because when I sat and I spoke to her, and then when she told me her role at her job, and I say, wow, because normally, especially in Jamaica, we tend to think mad people, eating from the garbage bin, they are half naked on the roadside, or they are being very rude, or they are being, they're a threat to you. But
Yeah.
because can you imagine, this is your accountant and she can keep her head together. Come now and
Mm.
let me know. You understand me? I've
Yeah, the
worked with
risk.
nurses. Yes, I've worked with nurses who lost it on the job. They are
Wow.
suffering mental illness too. And this is why we need, because I mean, I don't like to bash government. We all know government is government, but they are responsible for the country. So instead of shutting down Bellevue, maybe what they can do is um put it into departments and put it in the different parts of the parishes, right? So, yes, you have an acute. Okay, for instance, in America, because we like to compare, America is our benchmark for healthcare in anywhere in the
Right.
world. And even though since being here, I really don't think they have it together, but the systems that they have, the model that they have, is really some really good models. It might not be able to be carried out because of shortage of staff, but the systems that they have in place, meaning you need a emergency room that is catered to mentally ill. So persons who are suffering these things, they can walk in, they can know that I am safe getting help here. Nobody's going to talk about me. I can reach a physician anytime and stuff like that. You can also develop telehealth, because that is another thing. Here in America, a lot of insurance, they cover these things. You can speak to somebody over the phone. You have suicide hotline, right? You have domestic violence hotline, because as I was talking earlier about your surroundings, persons suffer domestic violence. If every day you get up and your spouse is talking to you in a demeaning way, in a derogatory way, there's no way you can keep good mental health.
Right.
If there's a hotline for the average Jamaican to call and say, I'm going through this thing, somebody to talk to so you can work out some of the mental traumas that you're going through, right?
Right.
There aren't any of these systems there. So you
Just a
have to.
minute, not to really cut you, but I think they do. I think
Okay.
they do, because I think I've
Okay.
seen it circulating, but I
Okay, good.
still don't think that persons are so knowledgeable. I think
All
they're still
right.
going by the total books. I think they
Mm,
need persons who actually can connect with these people and talk to them, because they
yeah.
just place person and say, okay, you're going to work on this line, so whoever calls in, just talk to them. But that's not
Right.
how it work. You need to
No.
actually connect with the persons. You have
Yes.
to develop some channel where you can say, okay, it is safe. I understand what you're going through. I've had first-hand experiences, or whatever the case may be. But connection is a big thing.
Yes. Meaning that the persons need to be trained. So
Yes.
as you say, maybe this skill level is not there. Maybe they need, yes, because mental health and psychiatry, it's by no means the least in any given healthcare. It takes, if you ask me, it should take the same amount of weight as the neurosurgery. It should take the same amount of weight as ICU. It should take the same amount of weight as any other specialty, because it is
Right.
very important. Because even some of these very doctors and nurses that you work with would have displayed signs of anxiety. But guess what? There's nobody there. The training is not enough that you are able to identify it. You know what I mean? Even teachers,
Right.
because I've been a school nurse before. I have worked at a teachers college. So this is a tertiary institution. And I cannot begin to tell you the amount of students who are coming in. They are thinking that they have a problem in their body, but I could have told them right away, you need to go and speak with the guidance counselor. You need to go and seek some form of a psychological help, because you're dealing with some past traumas. You're dealing with your own limiting belief. Me giving you Daika is not going to solve your problem. I can give you that and it can give you some relief. But what about this limiting belief that you suffer? And then now, these teachers are going to graduate and they're going to be in early childhood. They're going to be in secondary education. They're going to be in primary education. Now, if they're suffering from this that they don't even know, how are they going to identify this in their own students? Do you
True.
see
That's
what I'm
very
saying?
true.
Yes. So
Yes.
very important. Even nurses who work in industrial. So your nurses that work at Alpart and all these places, they have to be able to identify these things, that you can keep your staff optimal. This is why the policies that a human resource put in, to some extent, they protect an employee on the job, because then you need people who can identify what are the risk factors for a person that is handling heavy equipment, that is handling dangerous equipment, right? If they're
Right.
suffering in their mind, then everybody is at risk, because a person with anxiety can pop at any time. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know what that outburst is going to be. So it's very good for us to really take our mental wellness into consideration. We have to really, you know, take, we have to see it as something that is very important. So we have to remove the stigmas. We cannot look at somebody and say, oh, she gone off, and being derogatory towards them. As nurses, as a nurse, I try to be very empathetic with my patient, and empathetic in the sense that I know that that can happen to me also, right? I've had times in my life where I've been irrational. I have let this anxiety take in my mind. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this was even before I would have seen patients before I've had my own episode. However, you should be able to give some form of compassion. So if somebody comes into you and you see that this is a mental issue more than it is the physical symptom that they are talking about, it is good for you to open their mind to this possibility. Don't
Right.
say that you won't get into the person's business because she did complain of that. It's not that you're putting a complaint in her mouth, but you have to now show the patient the whole knowledge, because remember, the body cannot operate without the mind, right?
Right.
So you can have a talk with your patient. Sometimes we have a lot of patients, and you have 15 minutes in order to assess your patient and do everything. But sometimes you never know if you spend the extra 5 minutes, because remember, they are not pigs. This is not animal that you're going to, you just move along. You just move along. You might see that this individual has a need. And I would say, out of the compassion of your heart, sit and give some time to this individual. If you don't have compassion, then you need to get yourself checked. This is all I have to say in regards to professionals who you sign up for this job, but for whatever reason you find yourself, because you don't sign up like this. None of us
Right.
sign up to take care of persons without compassion, without feeling the burden of people. When you see yourself running dry, it's time for you yourself to get checked. So if we don't implement a system that we know is reliable, that I can go into my colleague and say, I'm feeling frustrated and I am not sure why. If your colleague can have the sense to you to say, well, maybe it's time to take a break. You understand me? Or your
Right. Yeah.
supervisor realize that you're acting a certain kind of way. If they cannot identify you now as in need of mental help, then we have a problem in the system.
Yep.
And I think that is some of our problem. That is some of the problems that we face.
So, what advice would you have given persons who suffers either anxiety and
Mhm.
depression or depression?
Okay. Um, Advice. I would say, know this, that you are not the first that is going through this thing that you're going through. And to the person who is feeling hopeless and you feel as if there you can't even make it through the night, I will say to you, I just have to draw for the Bible. And I will say, that though weeping may endure for a night, that joy comes in the morning. Now, you have to try and seek help. You have to try and see what is in my surroundings that can be potentially threatening to my mental wellness and me thriving mentally. You have to dig deep down inside and see what is this limiting belief that I carry that is tugging at me and is really preventing me. And I will always say this: don't compare yourself to others. Comparison to other people, it already tells that you don't know who you are, right? And you're gonna get depressed because, as I said, the depression is I don't have hope, it's I can't do this, it's everything bad, it's everything negative. And when you open your eyes and look around you, you're gonna see all the good. Then you're gonna
Right.
say, oh, but that can't be me. Yes, it can be you. You have to fight these thoughts. When they come inside your head, you have to close them off. As a part in the Bible that says there are some thoughts that arises themselves against the knowledge of Christ. So this is a thought that arises itself against the knowledge of Christ, because Christ says about you that you are his beloved. So he says about you that he loves you. He wishes everything good for you, that you should prosper, that you should be in good health. This includes your mental health. So when these depressive thoughts coming up, you have to shut them off, but you have to seek salvation. So if you're not a Christian, you can now start to think in yourself. Maybe you grew up in the church, maybe you grew up around people. I mean, our culture is mostly Christian. That's what I would say. So it's nothing new that I'm introducing Jesus to you. But maybe you just need to seek out some time, read your Bible again, and hear who you are. Because a depression spirit cannot take root inside of a person who have proper knowledge of where they are from, who they are, you understand, and what your purpose is. Because sometimes we get depressed too because we don't know what our purpose is. Because you're trying so long to become a hairdresser and business is failing. You're trying so long to have a baby and it's not coming true. You've been dating, and you can't find a man. And you let these wrong identity about you take over your mind. So I just want to say we have to fight the mind. You can't fight it by yourself, but if you believe in Jesus, he will help you to fight it. You take your medication and pray out the side effects them, because some of these medication they will cause you to want to sleep too. Some of them they cause you to have
Yeah.
insomnia. Yes. If you're a person who suffer from anxiety, don't be going and drinking iced coffee, because then remember, you already have this fight or flight hormone. When you drink
Right.
caffeine stuff, energy drinks, and so on, they're going to increase your central nervous system fight or flight to be up. So you have to look into yourself. Take some time away from the crowd. Know what you're eating, know what you're listening to. Am I listening to things that are feeding the positive side of me? Or am I listening to stuff that are causing me to be perpetually negative? You know, find yourself new friends. If you have an old negative friend, you should not be on the phone talking to somebody that is just discussing things that are negative all the time. You know, unless it is showing you the positive. Let's say something bad happened to me, but I can tell you about it so I can bring hope to you. If that's not the point, then don't be sitting around and feeding yourself with negativity. Be careful of the kind of music that you listen to. Are you listening to music that will bring about fear and anxiety? Or are you listening to uplifting sounds that can speak to your soul and bring about this healing? You can find a church home. We have to be very careful with churches these days because a lot of people go there and get damaged. But you can
Right.
join online groups. There are a lot of groups online. Don't get into lives that are talking about things that are not uplifting to you. Let's say you've been through some kind of trauma, you've been through a hurt, and then you find yourself on a live that is talking about that. That's not good for you. Let's say you go through a breakup, you suffer infidelity, and then now you jump on social media and they're gonna be talking about these infidelous creatures. Don't be getting into that, because that is not gonna uplift you. You wanna talk about things that can empower you as a young man, empower you as a young woman, empower you in your career, in your spiritual walk, things that can uplift you. So that is my advice, really. It's what you put in that you will get out. So whatever is coming out of you, look back in your life and see, where did you get this thing from? It's time to empty. It's time to unpack and get a new. That's my advice.
And that's pretty much powerful. I'm sure persons can connect with that advice and know that
I
it's for the
hope that,
best. And
yes.
thank you for being on the platform and sharing your many insights. I do
Yes.
appreciate it. And your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And I really do hope that we can reach our people and effect the change that is required for them to live effectively, fighting this mental illness, anxiety and depression. We don't have to live defeated. We can stand with this thing. Well, I don't even want to stand with it, but we can stand on it and eradicate it. Right? So thank you very much for having me.